Which New York Giant players need to step it up in 2023? I'll give you my lists coming up on today's Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. My name is Patricia Traina, and happy Monday to everybody. Glad to have you with us as we get to the tail end of the month of February. We're currently in a down period, but free agency is going to start up pretty soon. Then pretty soon we'll be into the draft, and before you know it, football will be back, and I can't wait. I don't know about you, but I can't wait. And on today's show, we are going to talk about some players on the New York Giants who will be back in 2023, but who really need to pick it up for one reason or another as we move forward into 2023. So we're going to do that. We also have a listener question on today's show, which, by the way, is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. Ever dreamed of becoming an NFL GM and managing your own football franchise? Then this game is definitely for you. So go ahead, download it, and by visiting ultimate-gm.com or look it up in the app stores. Our listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On. That's in all caps, by the way, when they register in the game. Again, that's ultimate-gm.com. All right. I have a list of players that, for one reason or another, I think have to step it up in 2023. So I'm going to give you that list starting now. And if you agree, disagree, let me know. If you're watching on YouTube, drop a comment below. If you're listening on our audio platforms, send me an email. The information is in the show notes. Always happy to hear from you guys and gals. All right. Player number one that has to pick it up in 2023. This one's kind of obvious. Evan Neal, right tackle. Now, Evan Neal was a rookie last year, as we all know. He struggled with speed, struggled with a couple of injuries. You've heard me say time and again that Evan Neal, once he had that knee injury and he came back, his technique was all over the place. You know, he was bending more at the waist, which just totally threw off his whole leverage. So that being said, going back and looking at Evan Neal's tape from the start of his rookie year to how he finished up, he had some movement and balance issues throughout. And part of that is a result of him bending at the waist. There were times when he just didn't trust his technique. His pad level wasn't always, where it needed to be. He is a tall young man. I think he's like 6'5". So getting low enough to gain leverage and just, give himself a little bit more anchor was a struggle at times. So technique was all over the place. Evan Neal, according to Pro Football Focus, gave up 52 pressures. That was the most on the team by a wide margin. Now, you have heard me say before, I'm sure, if you've listened to the show, that I think Evan Neal in year two can basically have a similar type of turnaround as Andrew Thomas did in year two. Here's the thing. Here's the challenge, though. Whereas Andrew Thomas had multiple coaches in his year and that in his rookie season, including, one that was kind of messing with his technique a little bit. Evan Neal didn't have that. But that being said, there are things that they taught Evan Neal this year, different tweaks to his technique that basically he has to get comfortable with. And I don't think he really got comfortable with all that stuff, largely because he did miss a chunk of time because of the knee injury. So I think if he gets more comfortable with those techniques, works with an offensive line coach, and I also think if he drops a little bit of weight, he clocked in at 350 pounds. If he sheds a little bit of that weight, makes himself lighter on his feet, I wonder if perhaps that will help him with his balance and movement issues that he showed during the year. Whatever he does, the Giants need him to take a big leap forward in year 2 or 2023. They have their left tackle of the future, Andrew Thomas. They need for Evan Neal to step up. Now, some of you have asked me, well, what about moving him to guard? I don't think that's in the cards this year per se. Could it be in the cards down the line? Possibly. But I don't think that's going to be the case this year. I think they want to have him make it at tackle if he can. So curious to see how that works out for the young man, because they need him. They need that offensive line to really, deliver the goods. And last year, there were some problems with it. So, all right. Player number 2. Now, this one might be a surprise to some of you guys and gals. The player number 2 that I think needs to really step it up in 2023 is safety Xavier McKinney. Okay, what? You're probably saying, what are you talking about? Xavier McKinney was such a beast on the defensive side of the ball. Hear me out, folks. Xavier McKinney is going into his contract year in 2023. He has that hand injury that he's going to be continuing to rehab throughout the offseason. He told reporters during Baggy Day that he was going to hang around in East Rutherford and work on getting that hand right. Okay, so that being said, here's the thing with Xavier McKinney. He has had injury issues. First year, remember, he broke his foot in training camp, missed a good chunk of his rookie season, came back, played well. Last year, played okay. He played well enough. This year, the hand injury popped up. So staying healthy and being available moving forward, very important for Xavier McKinney. But from a performance perspective, Xavier McKinney needs to start making some impact plays. Let me give you some numbers here. He had 0 interceptions in 2022. That's kind of wild if you consider, for a free safety. That's a wild stat. All right. He matched his career high in pass breakups of 4. Not enough. Again, this is a guy who's playing your deep center field. And when he was tested, just didn't have any impactful plays. All right. He allowed 3 touchdowns in each of the last 2 seasons. Not a huge number, but again, ideally, you don't want to see that. You want to see that number closer to 0 or at 0, preferably. Overall, Xavier McKinney in 3 seasons, 6 career touchdowns surrendered, 6 interceptions, 8 pass breakups. Again, playing most of his snaps at free safety. Got to be better. Simply put, you got to be a playmaker back there. Now, it's interesting because I thought at the start of last season that Xavier McKinney could be a Pro Bowler. And the hand injury happened, during the bye week, which was unfortunate. But, you go back and you look, the talent's there. There's no question about it. The leadership is there. The want to is there. The production is not. And until that production really breaks open and Xavier McKinney starts delivering the goods on a consistent basis, he's got to step up. And this is why, by the way, I don't think Xavier McKinney's contract is going to be extended this year, or this offseason, I should say. Number one, he's got to get that hand right. He said he's going to keep working on, strengthening his grip. And he should be fine, by the way. I don't see any reason why he wouldn't be. But number 2, the production's got to really come through before you extend him long term. And I think with McKinney, what I could see happening is, they'll start the season, have him on year 4 of the contract, the final year of his contract. And if he plays well, maybe by the bye week, look to see if you can extend him. And if you can't, the next year, you could always use, the franchise tag if you need to, or, whatever the case may be, try and prioritize him as the guy you've got to sign. So that's how I see it playing out for Xavier McKinney, a good young player, a leader. He was the signal caller for the Giants this year, but they've got to get more out of him, simply put, because that production that I just gave you, it's okay, but got to be better, I think, if the Giants want to really take the defense to the next level. Okay, I've got a couple more for you coming up right after this. Hey, Giant fans, free agency is going to gear up in a few short weeks. And if you've ever dreamed of becoming an NFL GM and managing a football franchise from top to bottom, now is your chance when you play Ultimate Football GM. Build your own dynasty your way by picking the players, the coaches, and everything in between in a realistic game world that is free and playable offline. Come join our Locked On League where you can compete against Locked On fans all over the world. Simply choose Locked On League in the app to join us. And right now, Locked On Giants listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On. That's in all caps, by the way. So go ahead, visit ultimate-gm.com to download the game or find it in the app stores. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I am Patricia Traynor, your host. Thank you so much for tuning in. And before I give you a couple more players who need to pick it up in 2023, just a few programming notes for you. I am anticipating Locked On Live being this week. I believe it's going to be Thursday. I'm still waiting to hear back from Dog and Tana, but we will do a Locked On Giants live show in which we will talk about the salary cap. You will have an opportunity, if you join us on YouTube, to ask your questions. And if you don't watch us on YouTube, you can email your questions in and I'll try and work them into the show as we go along. So if you like to listen to us on audio, our audio platforms, send the questions in and I'll try to answer them as we go along the show. And we'll also talk about, where the Giants go from here, free agency, all that good stuff. So hopefully you will join us. As soon as I know the exact day, I will post a note over on the YouTube channel. I'll get the room set up and hopefully we'll see you there. We always have a great time when we do Locked On Giants Live, and hopefully you will join us for that. So, all right. Also coming up this week on the Locked On Giants podcast, I am scheduled to have an interview with one of our new colleagues at Locked On. His handle on Twitter is Fulltime Dane. He is Damian Parson, who is a scout, a national scout for the Draft Network. He is also one of the new hosts of the Locked On NFL Draft podcast. So I'm going to have Damian on, going to get his assessment of what this draft class looks like, how the strengths match up with the Giants' needs, and we'll just talk about, some of these prospects. So if there's a specific prospect you're interested in hearing more about, again, send it to me in email or drop a comment if you're watching on YouTube below, and I'll be sure to try and ask it of Damian when I have him on the show. I believe he's going to be on the show. We're going to tape the show Thursday, so that would be Friday's show in terms of scheduling. So that's what's coming up here on Locked On Giants. We are still 5 days a week. Appreciate you tuning in as always. Let's get back to the list of guys that I think need to step it up one way or another in 2023. All right, next one, cornerback Aaron Robinson. Aaron Robinson, very interesting thing what they tried to do with him last year. Initially he was a slot cornerback in college. But when they cut James Bradbury, they moved him to the outside. They felt that he could play the outside. I was never really convinced of that, despite the fact that he had the size and the physicality. I mean, at times, you'd watch him and you'd say to yourself, maybe he'd be a better fit at safety, because he just, to me, I just didn't see enough of it. You saw it in training camp. But then again, we all know how the Giants receivers were dropping like flies and how that kind of played out. So Aaron Robinson, here's the other thing with him. In 2 years, he's had 2 injuries that have cost him time. Right. His first season, he had the core muscle injury. And he spent the first half of the year on, I believe it was on the PUP list in his rookie season. Then he came in and he made some plays, showed some flashes. This past season, didn't play very much. He had the appendectomy in week 2, missed a couple games of that. Then he injured his knee, and that was a season-ending injury. What do they say about the best ability is availability? Aaron Robinson hasn't been able to deliver that yet. And that's one of the many reasons why I think the Giants are going to look to upgrade the depth at cornerback. I think they need to. I'd like to see them pick up a outside cornerback to replace Robinson and maybe play Robinson inside in the slot. Take advantage of his height and his size. How many times did, Darnay Holmes get overmatched, against a taller or bigger or more physical receiver? I'm not saying get rid of Darnay Holmes, but I'm just saying have that option. And they really didn't have it. But then again, they didn't have Aaron Robinson on the field because of injuries. So at this point, you've got to say, look, if this guy isn't going to get on the field, then, we'll get somebody who can get on the field. All right. Along that line, Shane Lemieux is another one. The former Oregon Duck. Great offensive lineman when he's healthy. He's a nasty customer. He was supposed to be the starting left guard. And then injuries struck again, right? He had the knee injury in 2021. 2022, he had the turf toe, rushed himself back, wasn't fully right, ended up back on IR. You can't build the offensive line if you can't depend on the depth. And I do think the Giants will bring him back. I think they will, allow him to compete. I'm not so sure he gets penciled in as the starter. I think that's Ben Bredesen's job right now to lose at left guard. But they got to get more out of Shane Lemieux, whether they move him as, like a tight end, a jump in the jumbo package, or maybe he competes with Bredesen for the job. Maybe they rotate, who knows? But, when they rotate these guys in, that to me tells me that they don't know or they don't have a preference as to which guy they really like. So, and then, in addition to Bredesen, you've got Joshua Ezeudu, who, if that neck injury that he suffered that ended his rookie season prematurely, if he's medically cleared, he's going to be part of the mix. So going to be very interesting to see what the Giants do at left guard. They're going to have options, assuming everybody's healthy and stays healthy. And I also think they will add some interior line depth in the draft. I would be shocked if they stand pat with what they've got. All right. Another guy who needs to step it up, again, because of injury, Azeez Ojulari. Now, Ojulari had the calf issue last year. He had, I think, a groin issue, if I'm not mistaken. He had something later on in the year. The sprained ankle. I'm sorry. He had a sprained ankle. This is a player who, when he is on the field, is extremely promising. I mean, the thought of him and Kayvon Thibodeau, wow. Giants haven't had a duo like that in I don't know how long. But he's got to stay on the field. Now, I go back to when we first saw Ojulari at the start of last year, the offseason program, and how he bulked up. I mean, he really bulked up. And I can't help but wonder if adding all that muscle so quickly might have, changed his get off, his weight, his distribution, just a whole bunch of things. Now, in fairness to Ojulari, the Giants were in the midst of swapping out their coaching staff, hiring new assistants and everything like that. So it's not as though he had, the guidance of a strength and conditioning coach from the team telling him, okay, go into the off season, train and gain only 5 pounds as opposed to 10 pounds of muscle. He didn't have that. He's got it now. So I'm curious to see if he comes in a little slimmer, if he comes in the same, what does he do? Because I would not be surprised if all that extra muscle just put more stress on his ligaments and his joints and everything like that. And when you're used to doing one thing and you suddenly gain weight and you try to do the same thing, like run straight ahead or explode or whatnot, and you don't adjust or compensate, you're going to hurt yourself. Ojulari dealt with injuries, lower body injuries. The ankle, that was just an unfortunate thing where somebody rolled up on him, but he dealt with injuries. And, the calf injury, that's a soft tissue injury that they have to fix. That happened on grass, by the way, not on turf. Okay. So when Ojulari is in there, remember, he only played 7 regular season games for the Giants last year, 2022. And he still finished with 5.5 sacks, which was second on the team behind Dexter Lawrence's 7.5 sacks. So this is just a glimpse of what this young man could do. Remember, as a rookie, he led the team in sacks. So he is a core piece. But again, got to stay healthy. And that is the biggest thing with him. And I just think that, in the offseason, I would not be surprised if he comes in and maybe reshapes his body again, maybe drops some of that weight, because I still say, and I'm not a medical expert, I'm not a sports trainer or anything like that. I still think that that was a factor in why he was why he was not able to be on the field as much as he needed to be. All right, that is my list. Coming up next, I've got a listener question. Don't go anywhere. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. And I don't know if I mentioned this or not, but recently, about 5 days ago or so, the Locked On Giants podcast surpassed 1 million views on YouTube. That's just on YouTube alone. And I just want to thank y'all for that. I mean, that means so much to me. When I first had to start this channel, I was very reluctant. I didn't even want to do it because I just didn't know how it would go. I didn't know how I would be received. You guys have made it so worthwhile. And, those of you who listen to me on the audio platforms, every year you help push me over, 1 million downloads there as well, which I appreciate. Talking is a whole lot easier than appearing on camera. Trust me. It's not something I was really trained to do growing up. I was always trained to write, which is always done behind the scenes. So just being able to come to you on YouTube and do this show, I really enjoy doing the show. I enjoy interacting with you guys and gals. And thank you so much for making the Locked On Giants podcast so successful. I'm just amazed when I look at the numbers, and I have to pinch myself because I'm like, wow, people are actually watching me. And they're not named Traina. So I appreciate that. I really do. So, all right. In this segment of the Locked On Giants podcast, we are going to do a listener question. As I've been doing, wherever I have an opening on the show, I take your questions because we just, at this point in time in the calendar, probably not enough to do a whole Twitter Tuesday or Twitter Thursday. So if you want to send me a question for the podcast, you could send it to lockedongiantspodcast@gmail.com. That's in the show notes, by the way. Or if you want to tweet it to me, send it to @Patricia_Traina with the hashtag AskPTrain. Or if you want to send it to me on Instagram, I'm at Patty Traina, PATTITRAINA. And you can send it to me there if you wish. So look forward to hearing from you. Let's get to the question. All right, this one comes from Gordon B., who writes, I believe Eli Manning will be eligible for the Hall of Fame in next year's voting. I personally believe that he is worthy of being a first ballot Hall of Fame inductee. What are his chances of eventually getting into the Hall of Fame and being successful on a first ballot vote? Great question, Gordon. Thank you so much for asking that. As far as I'm concerned, Eli Manning should go into the Hall of Fame. It shouldn't even be a question. 2-time Super Bowl winner, 2-time MVP. Guy never missed a game due to injury. Just a lot of intangibles. But that being said, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here, I suspect that the Hall of Fame voters are going to look at the fact that his 1-loss record during his regular season career was about 500. They're going to look at the fact that, the last several years of his career with the Giants, when he didn't have a whole lot of talent around him, including offensive line, which, I think we can all agree his offensive lines in the latter part of his career were just not very good. People are going to use that against him, especially the fact that his 1-loss record was so bad. I suspect people are going to look at the fact that he got benched in that final season for Daniel Jones prematurely. I still think I'm not so sure Daniel Jones was ready to start when he was, but Daniel Jones had the mobility, and that's something that appealed to Pat Shurmur, the head coach at the time. So that didn't look good, as far as Eli's records go. So what I'm trying to get at, Gordon, is I don't think Eli's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Do I think he should be? Absolutely. If I had a vote, that would be my vote. I do not have a vote. I am not on the Hall of Fame voting committee. All right. I don't know who's going to present Eli's case when he does come up for election, but whoever that person is, they're going to have a hard road to travel there to convince the committee to put Eli in on the first ballot. I really believe that. Now, maybe they'll surprise me and they'll say, yes, he goes in, because look, in the postseason, Eli had I think a much better record. But when you look at everything combined, Eli was never an MVP. Yes, he was a Pro Bowler. I don't recall if he made All Pro. I want to say if he made All Pro, he might have made second team All Pro. But too many factors working against him, I think. And, I hope he gets into the Hall of Fame eventually. My fear, though, is the longer it takes, then you're going to have Roethlisberger, Rivers, you're going to have Brady eventually. You're going to have other guys who are going to be easier shoo-ins, I think, for the Hall of Fame. So Eli, I think, is in for a wait. I hate to say it, but that's my feeling on that. Hopefully I'm wrong, but I don't think I'm going to be here. So regardless, Eli is in the Ring of Honor where he belongs. And I guess for Giant fans, that's better than nothing, right? I mean, that's something special. And retired jersey number, he's still around the franchise, still a beloved figure. It's interesting because I know fans towards the end of his career, they wanted to run him out of town on a rail. And now that he's back, doing work with the team, even when Daniel Jones was struggling, people were like, oh God, can we bring Eli back? So it's just kind of funny how the opinion on Eli changed throughout those years after he was retired. And, I said it when Phil Simms retired. I know there was no social media or YouTube or anything like that, but when Phil Simms retired, I said, I remember saying and writing this, I said, it's going to be a long time before the Giants have another quarterback worthy of, being under center like Simms. And people are going to miss him when he's gone. And, the Giants, of course, went through Dave Brown and Danny Cannell. Then they found some, Ken Graham, let's not forget him. They found some stability a little bit with Kerry Collins, in the early 2000s there, late 1990s. And then it was just, then Kurt Warner came in for a little bit with Jason Garrett. And then Eli came along. And Eli went and promptly took over all the records in the Giants record book, all the passing records. So now it is up to Daniel Jones to break some of those records and maybe reset some of those records. So we'll see. As of this recording, Daniel is still unsigned, but hopefully they get him done before March 7th so they don't have to use the franchise tag on him, because that would totally upset, I think, the cap space that the Giants have available to them. So, all right. That's going to do it for us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. Again, I appreciate you tuning in and listening, making us your first listen of the day, or if watching on YouTube, your first watch of the day. Make sure you tune in tomorrow. We'll have an all new episode for you here on the Locked On Giants podcast.